Okie dokie. It looks like we are recording now. So, welcome to the Microsoft 365 Users Group of DC. Tonight we are talking about the Power Platform and development. Ed from Andworx, sorry, is our speaker tonight. And so, Ed, please take it away. Tell us a little about you, the company, and then dig into that material.
All right, yeah. So my name's Ed Williams. I work for a company called Andworx. We are a power platform and M365 focused organization. I have been with the company now for 7 months. I work with them to the Department of State. They do a lot of great solutions with that organization. There's a lot of things with the Power Platform that we've been evolving with, and we wanted to, to take this opportunity to really talk through what the Power Platform does within the federal space. There's a lot of things you go online to the internet, you can see what the Power Platform is, you can see what M365 does, but the nuances of working within the federal space sometimes lost on people. So really wanted to take this opportunity to kind of highlight what those nuances are and really what people can do, all these federal workers, to bring about change within their organizations.
Awesome sauce. Do you have slides or?
So I really didn't want to. I have one slide. I really didn't want to like talk through a lot of stuff because my goal here was really just have a conversation. I know you and I went back and forth on some questions and what we're going to talk through there. Really, the only slide I have is just a picture. If you want to, and I'll present that here right now over it. Open this real quick. It's just how to get in contact with us and Works. It's how to, if you are looking for employment opportunities, you want to get in contact with me on LinkedIn, that's this right here. If you are looking for some training opportunities, we had the fortunate chance of going to the Power Platform Conference down in Orlando a couple of weeks ago. And at there, some of us became advocates or ambassadors, that's the word, ambassadors for the M360, for the Power Platform training camp. So scan this here, it helps you get started in that there. And also, as I said, hiring at Andworx, this is us over here. But in particular, we are really looking for a Power BI developer. Right now, it's one of our hot ticket items. So if you are somebody who is a Power BI developer and you'd like to, work with us, scan this QR code and let us know.
Cool beans. I'll let everyone take that opportunity to scan things. So, what are the unique challenges of doing Power BI development in the federal government compared to commercial space?
Ooh, all right. So one of the biggest things is how you're going to connect with your data and the type of computing asset you're going to have to use. Particular, if like myself, I have my computer that I work on, my daily driver, my company work, my company computer, but then I also have my government computer. There's a lot of things where people have to understand about how you connect to data sources are going to be required. You always got to be inside of that government enclave, be it a virtual connection, some sort of VM, or you have to have that physical asset and VPN'd in. Another thing is some of the way the connectors work. Right now, I'm working with an organization and we're connecting to Dataverse. While Dataverse is a typically simple connection, just go on Power BI, hit Dataverse, connect to it. For some reason, in certain GCC instances, you have to go and roll back and use the old CDS connector. So working through things like that, that's unfortunately nowhere in the YouTubes about having to go through some of that kind of stuff. So what a challenge that a BI developer or really any developer within the Power Platform is going to face is to see what you have either in the Microsoft documentation or inside of the YouTubes out there, and just then take a step back and look at how your organization is either implementing something or how they didn't implement something.
I'm certain we could get into a lot of horror stories of some of the configurations you might have walked into. I've seen some interesting ones myself. No SSL, no fully qualified domain names, no all kinds of things. Um, but I don't want you to necessarily air dirty laundry. I'm just wondering, uh, other than the connectivity, like what are the challenges?
Well, see, outside of connectivity, I mean, that's the beauty behind the Power Platform is that you have these tools that are readily available and readily used by anybody. So once you work out the nuances of connectors, of those, permissions that, anybody can have to work through, it's really no different than working in a commercial space. So it's as long as you can look at the security aspect of it and know that just about any time you get an error, it's probably because of credentials and it's probably because of the way your connector is configured or the way that your tenant has configured a connector. It's always looking through that kind of stuff. But once you get past that, it's really no different than any other developer.
Have you've worked on GCC, GCC high, any other above that yet?
I have worked in lots of things. So uh, I've been 20 years Maryland Army National Guard. I had worked as a government civilian for the U.S. Navy. For a number of years, I was a contractor for the U.S. Navy and a civilian. I left civilian work and then came over to Andworx because of the great opportunities they had. But while in there, I worked a bunch of different enclaves. So I've worked lots of different programs and lots of things. So yeah, I've had a lot of experience working in some of those higher enclave type areas and some of the lower enclave areas. And one thing that I typically enjoy about Power BI, and this is how actually I got started, was Power BI was that tool that was allowed in some of those higher enclave areas. So while you don't get access to the Power Platform because those things are connected, getting the old Power BI server and then having the Power BI desktop are a phenomenal tool to have. So if you're somebody out there who only is ever going to work in those really high enclave type things and you're going to be, in the SAPs and those kinds of stuff, and you want to do some data analytics, there's a lot of vendors out there who look to do stuff. There's the Clicks, there's the Tableaus, but BI with its server and its Power BI desktop are a phenomenal thing to use. And I cannot recommend it enough, especially in these higher enclave areas. Like myself, when I got started using those, that really gave me the taste for, oh, what is this? And then looking down at some of the Nipper sides and what we had over there, and then eventually over into the commercial side. On the side, I run a 3D printing company, and I was trying to do some analytics for how my stuff was selling and what was going on with everything. So I just threw up Power BI desktop and started getting all the numbers and seeing what it could do. So it is a phenomenal tool and has typically attracted a lot of people go when they start.
Yeah. The only time, well, I've worked in a lot of special areas myself in the intelligence community, JWIX and above, and whatnot. But every single client was using Tableau or nothing at all. Excel, use Excel. Um, so I'm kind of surprised you're able to use it because I didn't know um, if it was really just like a CNA problem, getting it all certified so everybody could use it, or if it was a political thing. I didn't know what was keeping people from using it. Are you finding yourself caught up between, well, this is how we do it? We always use this other product. Are you having to fight for Power BI use?
So when I was working in some of those higher classification areas, and we did have to have those conversations, that really wasn't a thing we had to worry about. I was very, very fortunate. I worked at NavAir. I worked at an analytics organization within NavAir, and we did some pretty nifty things over there. And they were always about looking for the next big tool. So looking at, using things like, Click was the first big data analytics that we were using. The Navy had, and for the longest time, used Tableau, but once Navy 365 came around and they said, hey, you know what? We've already got this Power BI. Why are we also doing this Tableau thing? And I apologize to anybody on the line who's a Tableau person first. I can't stand Tableau. It drives me bonkers. Like BI is just so much easier. I start with the
It is.
visualization,
It is.
and then I can start putting stuff on there. The fact that it's paint by numbers almost with Power BI.
Yeah.
I put up my pretty graphic, and then I put the little number here, put the little number there. With Tableau, I got to think of this. It does some really good analytics. I'm not gonna lie, but I got to think through all this stuff first before I even get my first visual on there, and that just breaks my developmental cycle. So yeah, I know personally, and then with the component of the Navy that I was in, we dropped Tableau pretty hard.
Like a cheating girlfriend.
Yeah, now over at Department of State, it really depends on where you're at. I know many folks have their tool of choice, but Power BI, again, because of the connectivity with M365 and because the ease of training and the ease of deployment, more and more folks are making that the tool of choice. There's still some hangers on there, with some access databases and doing some things out there. I know, like we had one poor soul. He brought up access, and I wanted to send him flowers. I was like, "Oi!" So yeah, there a lot of Power BI really is taking the lead on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So what about Power Apps and Power Automate? Are we having just connectivity issues, or what are your bigger um, hurdles to fight through on those?
So really, for what we're doing on a daily basis, it comes down to uh, just getting people in front of it. It really depends on the type of tools, like Power Apps, for example, right? Power Apps, if you're building a model-driven app, if you're building a Canvas app, it's really getting that thing in front of them and showcasing the power, what you can do with it. I have, for the longest time, didn't build a lot of model-driven apps. I was purely a Canvas guy because I did a lot of stuff with there because when model-driven apps first came out, it had that Dynamics 365 look about it, and all those random site pages. Oh, it was so awful to look at. I couldn't stand it. But with the updates to model-driven apps over the past year or so, it's become a lot easier and a lot better to look at. So it is something that has really shown that we can get stuff to a customer much faster and much easier with doing those kinds of things. So once we get that first app in front of them, they go, and they say, you know what, this is something I want to go with. And then when I turn around and say, when they come to ask me, okay, what do I have to install on my desktop and how long does it take to ATO? And I say, well, there's nothing to install because it's all web-based and it's ATO'd the day you told me to press go. That is the
Exactly.
number one thing I can say about Power Apps or the Power Platform in general is no ATO. Once your organization has it inside of there, he has ATO. Peter.
And also, they already have it licensed. I mean, that's the other thing, right? They're already
Exactly.
paying for it and they probably don't realize it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen.
Exactly. It's something whenever people would want sites and things built on SharePoint, or they want their own special, IIS server and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, why? Why do you want to go through CNA and getting a new certificate and just put these pages up on SharePoint? And they're like, they didn't even understand like what SharePoint was. Well, it's a platform, it's
Yep.
not just a, you know, website.
Yeah. And then
And
there was like Power Automate. There's another phenomenal thing. I had one of my favorite examples was I have a friend who was working with the Department of Air Force, and he worked with this young lady who her job in life was to take things out of Exacta or it was even EMAS, take it out of EMAS to do stuff with it, and then send it over to somebody else so they could analyze it. And she was always behind, always behind, always behind, never get stuff done. He sat down with her. He built out a Power Automate flow that would take in that spreadsheet, do whatever she needed to do to it, and send it off to all 20 people who need to. She was back on top of getting her job work done within one day. He told me she literally wept because she could never get work done. So it's things like that, automating the mundane or automating things that can be done. We have computers. It's 2022. Let the computers work for us.
well, it's not just that, the robotic automation, right?
RPA, yep.
They can access legacy systems on mainframes using Power Automate, run through these steps, and that way you don't have to go pull someone out of the grave in order to write the code that they've been using on these mainframes.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, or RPA, that's something that I know, I know particularly like the organizations that we work with, they are still working through some of the ATO part because of the connector that's got to be on the desktop. So just like Power BI desktop, there is a separate thing that's got to be installed on your computer. So there, a lot of those companies or a lot of those organizations are working through that. And I know, particularly ours, they have it. They are, going through some pilot things right now with it, and I'm really excited about it because I've used it again. I've used it here on my personal side, and it is a phenomenal tool to have on your computer. Just going through like scraping websites, you want to do some data analytics. How is country A or organization B or whatever doing with this? Well, they have a lot of stuff, free form on a website, but you don't want to go in there, copy paste, or go in there F12 and start, scraping everything. Just setting RPA, doing it all for you. So going there and getting a lot of the analytics is one of my favorite features of RPA.
Yeah. As someone who's currently looking, I see a lot of requirements for certifications for this, that, and the other thing, and I'm like, sometimes there's not necessarily a certification for that particular thing, like, Power Automate, PowerApps, whatever.
Yep.
What kind of education, if anyone's watching, are you suggesting that they just go out to the YouTube guys, Reza and Shane Young and Daniel Christensen, or are you saying, go to Microsoft Learn and take this, or Pluralsight and do that? I mean, where should people go to get their training?
So you brought up all the examples that I use on a daily basis. So personally, I love Microsoft Learn. If you only have one choice to pick from, always start with Microsoft Learn. Not only has Microsoft done, in my opinion, outside of Cisco, some of the best but free training you can get out there. So it will walk you from nothing to 100% on that product and get you all the way through there. And then sometimes, if you work for certain organizations, you can then work through those training paths and get the certifications for free. Again, I know I was the Navy. As a soldier in the Army, you can get a lot of these certification fees waived simply by putting in your, at whatever.mil type stuff. So working through that is a phenomenal resource. The next big thing for me, like I love Pluralsight, one of my favorite ones out there. But then Measure Up. So right on the Microsoft Learn websites, they have the practice exam, their official practice exams, and Measure Up is a great resource. If you do the thing where you get 280% in a row and then go take the test and they guarantee you're going to pass, yeah, it truly does work. That's what I do. I have a whole Power BI chart that I clock all my things. So as soon as I have 280% in a row, I go take the test and I'm good to go. So yeah, those are phenomenal. When it comes to using the products, so training is one thing. When it comes to using the products, Reza, PowerApps 911, Shane, those folks, those are phenomenal. Like, how do I do this? Like, I'm having a problem. How do I fix this? Those people are phenomenal resources. But if you're looking to train to pass a certification, always start with Microsoft Learn. Again, Pluralsight's a great one, and then using the Measure Up. And I know Mitch, good sir, you've got a good resource too yourself.
Yep, just quick plug for two things, and you already get one of them there too. The PowerUp program, which was one of your QR codes, I believe was just kicked off a couple of months ago. They announced down at the Power Platform conference in Orlando. Is meant for people who are making career transitions. So, everybody in this call, you all are pretty technical, maybe not necessarily for you, but I was on Reddit yesterday and somebody posted that they were coming from like manufacturing and they wanted to learn Power BI. Like, that's the person it's for. It's free. So Ed has the link in the QR codes with my referral ID in there. So feel free to use that. And the second one too, for those in the government space, the Enterprise Skills Initiative is another great spot to go to. You do have to have one of those .gov.mil accounts to get into it. But a lot of great training and vouchers too for certification. So you might not even have to pay for your cert. Very few people that I've met in those spaces even really know it exists. So we've been trying to promote that. But yeah, if you're in that space, try it out. It's called Enterprise Skills Initiative.
Awesome. You know, something you had mentioned earlier, because we were talking about, all these names of these people who create all this wonderful content for us. I don't remember whose blog I was reading the other day, but he gave a good example of how to migrate um, the Power Apps from one tenant to another by going into the form settings, exporting the package, whatever. Are you saying in those government clients that you have right now, separate dev tenants and whatnot, and are they making you build it over here before you build it over here, which I find just silly, to be honest, because the way that these things work, you just don't give anyone access until it's good to go. But
So I wish more organizations would do it that way. Particular, we work with a group now where they are processing data that really affects people's lives. So if we are doing our changes in production, we can, really muck some things up. So I wish more organizations would take the Microsoft, vetted approach and have that dev, test, prod, and build everything a solution. If I can take everyone's, one thing from this thing, build everything into a solution, not only is it going to make your life a lot more organized, because how many times have you gone to Power Automate and you looked at that big list of Power Automate flows, trying to figure out where's the one I was working on, where's the one I was working on. Building stuff into solutions lets you organize a lot of those things. And the next thing, don't build in the default environment. Always build inside of your environment. If you have, organization 123 and organizations 123 dev, organizations 123 test, prod, whatever it may be, always build in a separate environment and always build inside of a solution.
yeah, do they necessarily need to have another tenant, or could they just?
Nope. And so it's all, and I can find the infographic here, but Microsoft, everything's within the same tenant, but you're
That's
just
what I
building
thought.
separate environments. It's the three environment solution, and it's a phenomenal way of doing business.
I know I've seen it for Power Automate. I've not really seen it for Power Apps. Is that there for Power Apps?
Yes. So right now, and this is what a lot of things you're seeing right now within the Power Platform. It's all kind of combining into one. Where I
Okay.
go, I don't even go to the Power Automate page anymore. I do all my Power Automate building through PowerApps. So I go into
Okay.
PowerApps, I go to Solutions, I go to the solution I'm working on, and then I go New Automate or New Table or New whatever it is, and do everything through there. So I'm building everything into a stack. So in case I need to take this and I need to go from one department to another, because within the organization we work with now, they take stuff and they're built by department. So department A has an environment, department B has an environment, and there's sometimes we build something and hey, well, we really like what you did over there. We want to take that, export that solution as a typically an unmanaged solution, then put it over into the other department as another unmanaged solution.
Yeah, the blog I was reading, it was specifically about all of these citizen developers that we have who think that they are masters of, you know, design. And so they'll go create their own app from an existing SharePoint list, regardless of the color schemes, 508 compliance, etc. And then you have to move it. And that is where they're getting into this convoluted
Yeah.
way of exporting that package so you could re-import it later.
Now, to do stuff like that, that's where, things like connection references and that kind of stuff, where a lot of folks will do their references in the app or inside of the automate flow. So if you're going to build stuff like that, if you're going to build in an enclave and then you're going to put it over into the actual production, tenant, tenant to tenant type stuff, working in those connection references is going to be, a lifesaver. Because trying to do that and then redoing it that's a tuchus.
Yeah. So better practices, or do you have like a list of, you know, don't do this, you got to do this, etc.? Like, I would imagine one of my bigger pet peeves is people adding spaces or underscores, for the life of God, to their column names in SharePoint. And I imagine that in anything that you're doing, that becomes hell. Using, date as the name of a column or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. So
What
a
are your
lot of
top pet peeves?
So, and this depends on your data source, right? So like you bring up a lot of really good data source stuff things. If your company or your organization has, the full Dataverse over through there, a lot of those table things there are kind of fixed for you. You don't have to worry about a lot of those things because let's say I call this Ed's favorite table because it's amazing. It's got all the spaces and all the stuff in there. When I hit save, that's just going to be the display name. The actual production name is going to be nice, everything, no spaces, everything's going to look great. So it'll remove some of those things but yeah, putting things like date are pretty bad. But when it comes to building, when it comes to doing that stuff, Microsoft actually has a really good best practice thing. Like when you're going in there and working on a Canvas app, naming all of your stuff correctly, grouping things together. Like if I'm going to build a label, I'm not just going to call it label underscore blah, 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 blah. It's going to be LBL, the name of the thing, the name of the action that it's performing, and then, a short thing for the page. So stuff like that. So following the Microsoft best practices are one of the best things you can do.
Yeah. I've been hogging up the time trying to act like I'm a Larry King or something. Does anyone else have a question here that you can ask Ed and or share any horror stories that you've got?
There was a question in the chat.
Oh.
Naveen asked for M365 users, what would be the best approach for ALM since they don't have access to Dataverse?
So with ALM, application lifecycle management, we're not having access to Dataverse. So you can still do a lot of your development. So let's say, for that example, SharePoint is your data source, right? Because typically, if you don't have Dataverse, you're probably going to roll back over to SharePoint. You can still do a lot of that within your dev test prod. That's where connection references come into place. So building those connection references inside of a solution instead of inside of the app or inside of the Power Automate flow are going to come into play, because then once you take it from your dev to your test to your prod, you just simply update those references. But it's kind of difficult with SharePoint, as you're aware, because that means you have to have 3 separate SharePoints, and I'm not just taking that Dataverse table and pushing it 3 different times. So that's a nuance that you have to work with when it comes to SharePoint, unfortunately. But you can overcome that, by I know for us in particular, we have, a test SharePoint page or a test SharePoint site, excuse me, and we build, test lists here, test lists there, and all that kind of stuff. So that's how we typically go through that kind of thing. So yeah, difficult thing because licenses, the premium license that comes with wanting to do Dataverse and some of those connectors. Yeah.
Just to, I think Naveen mentioned it, but just to be clear for folks, solutions requires Dataverse. So if you want to use solutions as part of your ALM strategy, you would need to have a premium license to establish an environment with Dataverse. So that's just something to think about. You can set up Dataverse in the default environment by running a approval workflow that'll actually install Dataverse for free, air quotes. And then from there, you could use solutions. The other way to do it is with Dataverse for Teams.
Yeah, so
exactly.
you
I was
can
going to say Dataverse for Teams is free, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Dataverse for Teams is free. So if Naveen, if your organization has access to Dataverse for Teams, then you're golden. You can set up 3 teams, dev team, test team, and a prod team, and you could use solutions to move your solutions between those environments. But just to be clear, there are some limitations. So Naveen, you're not wrong.
Yeah, they're restricted just to Teams, right? So that's something that might not be used to.
You're going to say something, Ed?
Oh, so when you're setting up those environments, so yeah, you can set up those environments, but not all the times you have to set up with Dataverse. You can set them up without a Dataverse table and stuff like that. It's not. I personally never seen anybody do it, but yeah, you can. There are ways you can get that. Dataverse for Teams, yeah, is a great example. If that's all you have, run with it because it will work. It can be kind of annoying building PowerApps inside of that little Teams box right there, but it does the job and it will get the solution taken care of.
Cool. M365 licensed users don't have access to solutions. So, okay. I'm having a problem here. Sorry. Brain issues. Anyone else have questions, comments, anything in particular? I'd just like to, what's the natural progression to go into this kind of development? What do you think that Microsoft still has to do in order to make this right? Because I know that, like, when it came to SharePoint development, people started rewriting DLLs and full trust code was horrible. Then they're like, well, let's give them sandbox solutions. And then that was a nightmare. And so now we're using like SharePoint framework and all that stuff for SharePoint dev. So what are they doing where you're like, God, I wish that they were doing it this other way? So it's, proper development procedures, what's, is there anything that they have yet to build out so that it's done right?
So, and this is kind of to the ALM question there. There are some folks who want to take stuff and put it over into either Azure DevOps, ADO, or put it into GitHub. That's kind of a difficult thing there. So you can like actually follow the proper application lifecycle management. The thing I would have said if you'd asked me a couple weeks ago was being able to work on an app at the same time as other folks, but that is now coming. That has been released. That was probably one of the biggest things. One of the only reasons I was ever going to use ADO when it comes to PowerApps was so I could do co-authoring within that. But now that has working on the, I've used it on the commercial side myself, but it's coming to GCC in the near future. So that's one of the biggest ones there. I would say, looking forward to. So you don't have to lock out an app or all that kind of jazz with that. But one thing that I know some folks have an issue with is, we're talking about PowerApps, we're talking about automate, we're talking about BI. They say, well, why doesn't this fall within, my traditional software folks? Like I have, .NET developers over here. I have folks over here who this sounds like their job. Why is this, falling into my wheelhouse, right? Like why do I have to be a developer too? And this is really where, Microsoft has been pushing the citizen developer and everything that has associated with it. And I'm a huge advocate for that because a lot of times where, yeah, there may be a developer out there who's really good at that, but nobody knows your data better than you. And if you have the training and if you have the power to take your data to the next level, this is what the Power Platform can do for that. Going in there with the PowerApps and trying to visualize your data a little bit more, or trying to do actions with it, or trying to automate try to automate with it, or build those really nice dashboards. Nobody knows your data better than you. So if you can build just something small, if you and your team are only 3 people and you guys are constantly doing the same thing over and over again, maybe building a small app so you can interact a little bit more, or building a dashboard so you can send leadership so they stop asking the same question again, or whatever it may be. So I know some people like I say, that's them over there. Those developer folks, that's what they're supposed to be doing. This is not about that. This is about empowering people to take advantage of their data.
Yeah, it's with a little bit of power, dumb can be a lot more dangerous. and so I've met a lot of people who did their own thing. They thought they were developing, and they really did bad things. Creating loops that were actually took down a SharePoint farm, or all kinds of things. So like, what governance are you seeing put in place that helps to mitigate the dumb?
So this is where a lot of the built-in things with it. If you have things like the COE toolkit are going to help us up. A lot of the DLPs, a lot of things built in to the platform are already there. You know, for example, like Empower Automate, it's going to stop you at a period of time. Like if you have a loop, it's going to like, okay, no, stop. You've hit the trigger amount. No more for you. Come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you do things like, you know, build in the data loss prevention, ensuring that your data can't be just sent off to La La Land, whoever it's want. So there are a lot of great things at the tenant level that prevent people from doing stuff. But yeah, if then taking the next step further with the COE toolkit and really like locking those things down, or if I'm, you know, if I'm working on building some governance, going in there and maybe I have somebody who builds out a table for us, like we're talking specifically Dataverse, building out a table, building column level security, building row level security, and really just locking those things down so that when it comes time for somebody who's simply trying to, you know, work with the data a little bit more or visualize a little more, you can, you know, prevent the dumb.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Are you what's the growth potential? Like, are you seeing so much adoption right now that it's getting hard to keep up, or are you still fighting for new work?
So I know for us, we're kind of drowning in it. There are folks that they love it. Once they got the taste of it, they just wanted more and more and more. I had a particular group I was working with the other day. They do procurements, and they had this very, you know, old school way of doing stuff. You know, something came to the email, you know, Bob would work it, they send it over to Nancy do her thing, and boom, 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 boom. We took a step back, we opened a Visio, drew a quick model. So it goes this, 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 and this. Did a whole BPMN thing with them there, and then threw that into a model-driven app, and they go, wow, how can you then take this to the next step? So once people see the power of it and what it can do, it's really like there's more and more is coming with it. I really do believe that as more people see it, those light bulbs trying to go, oh, that's what you're talking about. That's what it is. But yeah, it's that first thing, getting it in front of leadership, or really having that strong IT leader within your organization to help push it. Once you get past that, you know, it's the sky's the limit.
Yeah. We're at 7:41. I've not always been ignorant to these questions. Sometimes I'm trying to lead you because I
You're good.
just want to get the conversation moving. But if anyone else has questions, comments, concerns, please chime in.
I would like to just know more about like the kind of issues you're seeing your customers having today with the Power Platform and how you're helping them. Like if there's a story you can share, or I know without naming names, but like if you get into like a headache they've had and how you help them through it, or if it's a
So
pattern.
yeah, there are, you know, let's go with this one, hoteling, right? So there was in GCC, so in your commercial environment, there is an application called bookings, right? I can take the
Yep.
bookings thing and I can say, oh, I want to have this hotel space here. I want to have this, bam, bam, bam. Well, in certain GCC places, you can't get that. But people really need that. We're in this telework, we're in this environment where this is going to be a thing for a while, and people wanted to reserve spaces. So along comes the Power Platform, and we said, hey, you know what? We can kind of rebuild this booking things, but with a little more flair and a little more nuance to your organization. And that we really did that. So we then took it, built it for one group, and then another group saw us like, oh, we really want that too. We built it for another group. So finding things sometimes that don't really work because we're in the GCC, and then, you know, putting that flair and the power of the Power Platform. And Mitch, I know you got one too.
Yeah, I do. Mine's actually not really technical. I know this is one that's common, especially within the government and federal space. You know, we have plenty of technically capable people like Ed and the rest of our team, but licensing is really like the biggest challenge for all of this. You know, like we'll talk, I guess, for instance, the one that Ed's supporting right now. we fought that fight to get PowerApp Premium per user licensing for the group, somewhere around 1,000 people. That took, I don't know, maybe a year of heavily advocating. And the path to get there's a few different ways. I mentioned data risk teams in the comments. That's a great way to get there, to demonstrate capability. Oh, hey, this is useful. These things are useful. Maybe it makes sense. But even if you've convinced someone that it's useful, just getting through the procurement, the assignment of licenses, the number of times we have to go through quotes and check in, and for what ends up being pocket change per user, the amount of work it's challenging, and it's not necessarily a fault of Microsoft or just a fault of government procurement, but it's challenging, I'll say.
It's bureaucracy, and part of it is they know that this is their budget, and then they find out, oh, we have transactional costs, and they don't know from month to month what that transactional cost is going to be. I've seen that, where they think that, oh, well, this is a flat fee, I'm good for the year. They don't realize that they're having peaks and valleys in their costs because of what they're doing with it. Like, your hours and stuff in Azure, they don't realize I get 160 free hours a month. I turn off my machine most nights so that that's my most powerful PC is in Azure, by the way. But I only run it for up to 160 hours a month.
I'd say thankfully for majority of the stuff that you're doing in the Power Platform, maybe outside of like the AI side of it, it is flat, right? Like, we know per user premium is going to cost a certain amount of money. A lot of times in government, these tenants are huge, so volume pricing brings the cost down quite considerably. We know we need a premium per user. We know we need a premium app. And it's going to be $30 a month or whatever, right? Like, whatever that price point is. It's not considerable, especially when you consider the time saving. That extra hour somebody had to spend to process that grant application or whatever has just exceeded the cost of the premium licensing for the entire month. But yet it can be challenging. So I'm sure we've all felt that pain.
But Mitch, in your licensing example, right? It's not just a procurement license of the licensing, it's the actual tracking. So, a lot of, in the federal government, they're using ServiceNow to track all that stuff. It's clunky, it's big, but us building a Power App and Power Automate to track number of users that have a specific license actually helps with, delivering those license and knowing at like a smaller level, 1,000 user or so level, who's using it. And then BI on the backside too, just to have the visuals.
Yeah. Are you doing a lot of mobile for the government clients? Are any of them doing mobile?
Yes, it depends on what you're doing, but yes, if you have your mobile device set up within the GCC enclave, getting that Power App, and actually have one over somewhere installed on there, works great. We had a solution that was purely meant for scanning a QR code, so they could perform an action. It was phenomenal. It was locked down, and it was everybody within that had access to it. So yeah, it's pretty good. Like a great example for building a Power App and Power Automate that I always go back to is, so I'm a Chief Warrant Officer in the Maryland Army National Guard. I just came back off deployment a couple months ago, and on deployment we had this big problem where I have soldiers, and I had soldiers, dispersed throughout different areas, and they had to go do stuff. But every year, the Army and the DoD as a whole, everybody wants your cyber training cert, right? Everybody's aware of that. Everybody needs your cyber training cert. Everybody needs all the certs and everything. And say, okay, every soldier, send me your cert with your name, the certs, and the date you did it. Please send that to me. Well, I'd get that. It would be date, cert, your name. It would be the download.pdf. It would be all sorts of crazy stuff. It was a nightmare. So the man hours then spent trying to figure out and all that kind of stuff was awful. So instead, we built a quick Power App that would look up your name when you logged in. You would drop your cert in the file. You'd say, hey, this is my training cert for X. This is, my cyber cert, whatever it is. And then you'd hit upload. It would rename the file for you, put in the right spot. It would then check off a list. So then all I have to do is come in the morning and I see my Power BI report and I go, this private didn't finish it. This specialist is good to go. Hey, why aren't you guys doing? And I could then send all this stuff up to battalion and be a happy-go-lucky man. So that I know for myself saved me countless man hours. The hair was gone by then, but just doing the small things. So we could talk about building PowerApps, doing like moving, big boulders and that kind of stuff, but just saving people time by doing the small things of just naming files correctly.
Yeah, I used to do similar things with like document sets, and you could have a SharePoint disaster workflow doing it. Now that I have Power Automate, it is a little bit, it's different. Some things are easier, some things are harder, but I Power Automate's great because of everything else it touches. I was thinking of something, and I want to go back to the connectivity issues. Are any of your customers using VPN access for all of their staff working from home, and therefore the pipe is so tiny that it's causing any of those connectivity issues? I know that with some of my former clients that all of our data traffic, including for Teams, was routed through the VPN, and they didn't have any split tunneling. So we were trying to throttle and limit the video, resolution when they're on Teams, just because of the amount of data going through those pipes.
I personally haven't ran into that issue. I know that I have my computer here that I do my daily driver type work on. That I go in via a browser to do some of the stuff. But when I'm on my VPN'd in government issued laptop, I typically don't have that problems. I know that when COVID first happened, the Department of Navy I was in, our VPN allowed for like 100 people to connect at any one given time. But thankfully. Those things have been rectified since then. I know it is much, much better now over there. And a lot of places really it might be an issue with some things, but I really don't see that issue lasting very much.
Yeah. Definitely the number one driver for digital transformation has been COVID.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing in a way. Anything else you'd like to add? I don't want to try to stretch this out, but if there was anything that you're planning to get out there during this
So
session?
the only thing I can really talk about is, doing this as a full-time thing. There's some people where they look at the Microsoft verbiage of being a citizen developer, of doing it, as a side thing within your actual job. And can this actually be a career? And I can say for myself, and I can say for the other people sitting over at Andworx, that yes, if you are somebody who really believes in what these tools can do and how they can advance the federal governments, this can be a career for you. I was a Navy civilian. I was higher up there, and I left because I believe so much in what these tools can do, and I believed I could do more for the federal government by jumping over here and doing this. So yeah, if you are somebody who really thinks that you have some of the skills, or you want to get these skills, and you want this to be your job, yes, Power Platform can be a full-time career and a very fulfilling career.
Definitely got to agree with that. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop on the recording, and